right, good morning, everybody. Today is Tuesday, June 14th, 2016, and this is Before the First Cup of Jewels here on UCY.TV. Happy Tuesday, everyone. It is a sunny 61 degrees and pretty nice here in upstate New York. All my plants are loving the sunshine. I had a little bit of rain yesterday, so everything poofed right out. So where do we leave off yesterday? We titled the show... let me scroll up. Precision medicine equals Obama sold us to Mad Pharma, and that's pretty much what he's done. We talked about a lot of things yesterday. It's been almost a whole month looking at edible vaccines and gut bacteria, the immune system, and how it all works together, being able to influence the brain and the immune system directly from the gut with bacteria. And we really kind of touched on now this whole other component of this, and this is precision medicine. Obama, over the last year or so, has inked a few executive orders and actions, a few national initiatives. One of the initiatives, of course, was the Brain Project, and that is being worked on globally in universities and different institutions. There's lots of private companies that have also gotten involved, and really disturbingly so, lots of tech companies as well. Lots of billionaires pouring in research dollars to crack the mysteries of the mind, but not just that, the mysteries of the body, the mysteries of the brain, the blood, longevity projects. He who finds the secrets will be a rich man and control it all. And that should be frightening to all of us. This is part of this march toward bringing us all together under an umbrella of a new world. Yes, look at what a horrible world we have. Oh, another big terror attack. Everyone be afraid. We have ISIS under every bed and in every closet, as well as Zika mosquitoes. But you know what? There's a cure for that. It's called precision medicine. Not really, but you know, this is how they're pushing it. This is going to keep you safe again. And of course, with everything becoming so expensive and the world being such a big place and so many people, and with us being such a bunch of giving people to poor nations, we have to find a way to provide quality health care for a very small price. And I mean, sure, nanobots in your blood, edible vaccines. What did we find out yesterday? Like, I could not believe how many foods they have been messing around with making into edible vaccines. I mean, it was half of foods that we eat on a daily basis. And peanuts, I'm going to tell you, one of the ones that I looked up yesterday was a carrot. Because at the beginning of the show, I read off a list of all these foods: tomato, potato, apples, alfalfa, soy, bananas, rice, lettuce, tobacco, peanuts. I mean, it was just insane stuff. But I had never read about a carrot. So after the show, I looked it up. I went, you guys check this out. Pretty surprising. May 4th, 2012, this is 4 years ago, first drug from genetically modified plant approved. Now, did you know that we had GM plant drugs approved on the market? Because I know I didn't. This week, May 1st of 2012, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration approved the first drug for humans produced by a genetically modified plant. Made by Israeli biotech Protalix. Now again, what is with all this Israeli biotech and science backdooring its way into the United States? I mean, we found out a while back about the whole Israeli partnership working on neuroscience and brain project stuff, and now we're working on edible vaccines as well. Plant made by Israeli biotech Protalix Biotherapeutics and licensed in the U.S. by, and these guys are a biggie, Pfizer Ililcio is an enzyme replacement therapy for Gaucher disease, a rare genetic disorder in which individuals do not produce enough of an enzyme called glucocerebrosidase, resulting in the buildup of fatty materials in the spleen, liver, and other organs. Pfizer and Protalix is already made Ililcio available to some Gaucher disease patients as part of an early access program after Genzyme, the maker of Cerezyme, a glucocerebrosidase enzyme replacement product produced in hamster cells, experienced manufacturing delays due to the hamsters all dying. No. Dude, what? They're creating this stuff in hamster cells and now in carrots. They experienced manufacturing delays due to contamination in its Massachusetts plant. I sure hope they don't have like racks of little captive hamsters that they're producing pharmaceuticals in. What a horrifying thought. And whatever happened to going out to the rainforest and plucking a flower and going, hey, look, this has all kinds of interesting curative properties. Let's grow some in a big field and make some medicine out of it. I mean, isn't that the way we always assume that drugs were made? I mean, not anymore, I guess, but I guess in my simplistic way, I had assumed that they were just using plant proteins. I mean, I know they've been doing all kinds of awful things, but I still try, and it makes me really sad when I think about things like that. So now we're using genetically modified carrot cells, and Pfizer and Protalix officials say they have built up enough inventory of Ililcio to supply patients for at least 24 months and are continuing to produce more, said the Dow Jones Newswire. Scientists have been able to genetically modify plants to produce human proteins for what? 20 years. Yes. Now that's what we've been discovering and digging into all these edible vaccines. When we first started with Dr. Arnsten looking at the banana vaccine, that research had started back in the 70s and the 80s. And they had already started experimenting with some of the other edible vaccines back in the early 90s. So yes, using plants, genetically modified plants to produce human proteins, been doing that for almost 20 years, and the U.S. Department of Agriculture approved vaccine for chickens is produced in plant cells. But regulatory concerns, such as risks of allergic reaction, due to differences in how plants process proteins, have made it difficult to get approval for GM, genetically modified plant-derived drugs for use in humans. Now, you guys remember that we discovered they had on the market in the early 90s. And I talked many times about the out-of-the-blue allergy I ended up getting to tomatoes back in the 90s. And I mean, literally, this is something you will never forget. From toe to head, complete utter hives every time I would eat a tomato. And I mean itchy everywhere. And I worked in a restaurant back in those days. I was in college. I was waiting tables to pay for school. And, you'd get half-price food when you work in a restaurant. So you go on your break and I'd make a grilled cheese and tomato or a cheeseburger and tomato or a nice big salad and tomato. And I mean, it happened bunches of times in a row before I finally said, shit, maybe it's the tomatoes. But I'd be during my work shift and end up with hives all over my body. Nothing ever told us that there were GMO tomatoes on the market. I didn't know about it until just a year or so ago, and was able to tag that back to that very same time period when I had that tomato allergy. And now we're finding out that, yes, genetically modified plants that were made to produce human proteins, potentially wink, seem to have a big issue in humans because of an allergic reaction factor. Just saying, but it's pretty interesting. Anyway, this approval demonstrates the proof of concept for the power of this technology to make large numbers of proteins, says David Alverzier, president and chief executive of Protalix, to Nature magazine. We are ready to make many more, he says. To read more about this effort using plants to manufacture drugs, there's a column called Botanical Biofarming with a PH. And this is something that I posted a little bit about the other day. I mentioned it yesterday. Farming with a PH. From a genetic perspective, if you look that up on Google, you're going to find lots of people in white coats, sometimes with face masks and eye goggles on, in a big indoor greenhouse with special blue lights glowing on the ceiling. And they're growing lots of beautiful, beautiful green plants, which should make you happy, except that it shouldn't make you happy because these are mutant plants that they are slicing and dicing to do who knows what with them. And we talked about some of the Blue Angel program from DARPA to make the universal flu vaccine. We see now that they're making this new synthetic immune system. Guys, this is mad science gone mad. They are genetically modifying our food. And now they are messing around with how to make our food into synthetic vaccinations or synthetic medications that can then go in and manipulate things within our body. In 2001, this was botanical biofarming. 2001, Prodigene was a poster child for the plant biotechnology industry. A privately owned biotech in College Station, Texas. Ding! Texas is where a lot of the stuff first started. Prodigene was the first to successfully commercialize a product made from a transgenic plant, a protein called trypsin, produced in corn kernels. Again, another GM food that's on the market is corn. Just saying, yesterday when we were looking, there were a lot of lines that could be drawn with a big fat Sharpie marker from foods that we know that are already on the market genetically modified to foods that they were experimenting with producing vaccines out of that were genetically modified. Coincidence? I think not. Anyway, a protein called trypsin produced in corn kernels and sold to the pharmaceutical industry for mammalian cell culturing. They also had more than 18 other plant-made products in development, including vaccines for travelers' diarrhea, Hep B, which we found the Hep B they were working on in the potato, the Hep B vaccine, as well as AIDS, and yeah, HIV is a big one right now. But that spring, 2001, the MIT Technology Review voted Prodigene's oral vaccine patent one of the 5 patents that will transform business and technology. But oh no, things began to spiral downhill about a year later. And on September 2002, the U.S. Department of Agriculture ordered Prodigene to destroy 155 acres of corn. Where? I hope you're out there, Jax. It was in Iowa. That may have cross-pollinated with nearby test sites of Prodigene's transgenic corn. Ding, 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 ding. Now, didn't I tell you guys, this is one of the things that I've been seeing when I've been digging into this edible vaccines, is that they said, well, we might not work on edible vaccines here anymore because, you know, there's just a real big chance that it could accidentally end up in the food supply. Wink. But we're finding out in a lot of the research that I've been digging up that a lot of the research is still going on in other countries. Here, we're focusing on lettuce and tobacco, it seems, at the moment. At least in the front room. Who knows what they're doing in the back room? There's about 25 years of research already behind edible vaccines here in the United States, and I find it really hard to believe that they would just chuck all that out a window. So anyway, they were worried that it may have cross-pollinated with a nearby test site of Prodigene's transgenic corn. So then in October of 2002, the USDA seized 500,000 bushels of soybeans contaminated by Prodigene's corn. And where? Oh, Nebraska. So we have soybeans contaminated by corn as well as GMO corn contaminated by corn growing outside. We have bees landing on all this stuff. And now it's really making me wonder if we've had these crops growing outside, GMO crops that are producing pharmaceuticals. We have this mass bee die off. And look, this started in 2001, at least that we know of. And they're trying to blame the pesticides. Who's to say that it's not the pharmaceuticals in the pollen? I guarantee you that there's at least got to be some residual in that pollen. Maybe the bees are getting drugged. They were saying a lot of that colony collapse disorder, the bees are all disoriented. And Dr. Huber was pointing out how glyphosate does chelate out manganese, and manganese is used for a lot of different things, but it would cause them to act all confused and to starve, even if there was enough bee bread, because they couldn't uptake proper nutrients. But I'm still questioning, what if the bee got poisoned by drugs, overdose? At least in Nebraska and Iowa. This is so disturbing, guys. So they let them grow these way out in the open. They let the genie out of the bottle. They seized 500,000 bushels of soybeans and destroyed 155 acres of transgenic drug corn. In the end, Prodigene was slapped with over $2 million in fines and cleanup fees by the government. And the question is now, who got that $2 million? Did the USDA get the $2 million, or did the farmers who got contaminated get some of that money? And that was the end of Prodigene, says Zvinko Nikolaev, former vice president of bioprocessing at that company, Prodigene, Prodigene, if you want to read more about it. But it wasn't the end for all plant biotechnology companies, however, since the first human-like enzymes were produced from transgenic tobacco. When? In 1992, people. So that was when they first started messing with this tobacco that the Blue Angel program was involved with. It was 1992 at Virginia Polytechnic Institute. A lot of military installations in Virginia. The biotech industry has seen a wave of companies trying their hand at biofarming with a PH, which is plant-based pharmaceutical production. These companies challenge the status quo of biomanufacturing, purporting that plant-based technology has the potential to produce complex biomolecules cheaper, easier, and faster than that of traditional pharmaceutical facilities. And rather than grow human or animal cells on expensive nutrient-rich media, for example, biofarming derives its manufacturing energy from the sun. Genes can be inserted into the cells of plants such as corn, tobacco, and alfalfa, splicing and dicing. And the plant does all the hard work transcribing and folding the protein using only Earth's abundant raw materials, water, carbon dioxide, and soil. Listen how they're spinning this. The thing is, when they're splicing and dicing and inserting genes, they make it sound like it's so innocuous. They could be inserting genes to do anything, people. This is what you don't get. And they can be inserting genes into anything and then slipping it into manufactured food or into the food supply where we don't require any labeling. This should be scary to everyone. Plants can also be grown in large fields, offering a much greater volume of product than a constricted multi-million-dollar manufacturing plant. But with major obstacles remaining, such as the introduction of the first plant-made human pharmaceuticals to the market, a handful of plant biotechs in existence today remain a bit uneasy until we actually get one of these over the goal line. Ding, which we found out that Israeli pharmaceutical company who licensed it to Pfizer did in 2012, creating drugs with the transgenic carrot. So it's already been done. They got it over that finish line. Till we get one of these over the goal line, you can never say that you're out of troubled waters, says Joseph Booth, VP of Research and Development at Semibiosis, a plant biotech company in Canada. So Canada, you guys are involved as well. So these companies are convinced This model is a good one, and having learned from the failures of 60 or so plant biotechs that have flourished and then floundered, they are working hard to push their products to the market. And you know what? If we get this 21st Century Cures Act, we could just chuck all the regulation out a window because they're going to rush these discoveries to market to help all the dead. Not the dead, but maybe the dead. And they're still, I just saw they're getting ready to launch that stem cell project where they're going to take brain dead patients who are on ventilators and start injecting stem cells into their brain to see if they can bring them back to life. So, that's going to be pretty frightening. But yes, preying on the dying and the very ill with no hope for tomorrow with these technologies. He says this is a new era for biotech. These companies are convinced this model is a good one, and having learned from the failures of 60 or so plant biotechs that have flourished and floundered, they are working hard to push their products to the market and with new alternative crops and techniques. The first product was on the cusp of FDA approval, and it may be the beginning of a new era for biotech. There are no major bottlenecks right now, he says. We just have to go and do it. And this is just about the time we're going to see the first successes from plant biotechnology. Quick and dirty, most plant biotechs, however, have moved indoors now, either to greenhouses or facilities with artificial light and within the confined spaces. And guys, so now it's all inside, so you won't even know it. I know down in Research Triangle Park in North Carolina, I believe that's where there's quite a number of large greenhouse facilities for transgenic plants that they are experimenting with. Within the confined spaces, without the promise of mass production over thousands of acres, these biotechs are instead carving themselves specialized niches in the pharmaceutical market. Metagako and Bayer Innovation GmbH, for example, are looking for speed, using the rapid growth plants to develop products that are needed quickly with short notice, such as vaccines. So Bayer has jumped both feet in with vaccines. Now, we saw just recently that Bayer has made a financial pitch for Monsanto. I don't know if there's been a second pitch. I know that Monsanto rejected their first bid, but don't think that that's over, because it's not. That'll be interesting. And of course, Monsanto technology is exactly what they want, splicing and dicing plants for all these years. One solution to Protogene's cross-contamination problem, the one that we talked about earlier between the soybeans and the corn and the regular corn and the transgenic corn, was to simply use different crops. Ventria Bioscience, based in Junction City, Kansas, grows transgenic rice. Now, remember, we talked about the rice vaccine, too. See, this is what gets me, is like, how can they say that they discontinued all this? They haven't, guys. And did we really know that there was all of these GMO foods out there already? Because I know I didn't. I didn't know about the zucchini and the squash. I had no idea that they really had started messing with rice. When did they start messing with rice? I mean, I stopped eating rice after Fukushima because there is no country of origin labeling. And, in Japan, they are still selling foods and trying to sneak it into marketplaces where they can. But anyway, Ventria Bioscience, based in Junction City, Kansas, grows transgenic rice designed to produce recombatant human lactoferrin and lysosome. It's early. Lysozyme, Lysozyme, proteins that are actually found in human breast milk that have a variety of applications in medicine. And they currently sell this product to the pharmaceutical industry. Now, guys, this story is from 2010. So that was already 6 years ago. 6 years ago. Because rice is self-pollinating with pollen grains that lose their viability 5 minutes after shedding from the plant, Plants grown far enough away from other agricultural fields are unlikely to contaminate other crops, right? But they still might get the bees. Symbiosis, which is based in Calgary, Canada, turned to a different self-pollinating plant, safflower, a thistle-like spiny plant with small bright flowers and sometimes cultivated for vegetable oil. In its seeds, safflower is not a popular food or an industrial crop in the United States, so Symbiosis is able to tightly isolate their field. The company genetically engineers the plants to produce medically relevant proteins on oil bodies within the seeds of the plant. And the oil bodies, which are lighter than water, are then separated from the rest of the seed proteins by a simple centrifuge, reducing the time and cost for downstream processing. This is just about the time we're going to see the first successes from plant biotech, says Zikov Nikolov, former vice president of bioprocessing at Prodigene. With the high volume potential of safflower, wonder if they're using any of that in safflower oil for food. Probably not, maybe. Who knows? It's why we don't have labeling people. You know, it really made me wonder what the huge attack was, why they wouldn't even want like a sticky label to say that this could be modified food. And you know, if the food was so good, wouldn't you want a label on it, right? We said that a million times. But now it makes a lot of sense. If they've been doing experimentation, and you know, I'm just postulating here, but it really kind of stinks to me that we're seeing all these connections between these GMO foods and these edible vaccines, and it happens to be all the same plants. And a lot of these plants already seem to be on the market in one way, shape, or form, and maybe we didn't even know about it because they've been on the market for 20 years and no one said anything. It leads me to believe that they've been doing stuff under the guise of national safety and security. Remember, the government itself is allowed to experiment on its own people, and especially if it's in the name of national security. And what we just read about that tomato, about the proteins and the allergic reactions, and at least my personal experience with tomatoes, I'm going to raise an eyebrow and at least say that there's some suspicion in my mind. I tend to be a suspicious person, but rightly so. Especially with these guys. I don't trust these guys as far as we can throw them. It's all about money, people. He who comes up with the best technology wins. And they have sold us now with precision medicine down the line to these biotechnology companies. And that's where we're really going to end up today, is to show you what they are doing today with precision medicine. I mean, this was just the beginning. They have jacked it up a few notches now. All right, anyway, we're going to get back to here. So now we're talking about growing vaccines in plants. Metageico and Bayer, for example, are looking to speed rapid growth plants to develop products that are quickly needed with short notice, such as vaccines. And in 1999, Quebec, Canada-based Metageico, and we've looked at them a lot of times. Metageico was involved with the tobacco leaves and the feds. Metageico is developing flu vaccines in the leaves of tobacco plants. And during the last potential flu pandemic, oh yes, remember that flu pandemic that never happened? But they were able to pull that emergency pandemic plan and open it up to experimental vaccines as part of that Project BioShield. The pharmaceutical industry came along with the vaccines that were too little and too late, says Andy Sheldon, the company's president and CEO. So because they weren't able to get us the vaccines that we needed, technology is now needed that can help respond to these problems quickly. Problem, reaction, solution, people. So that's how they validated being able to spend lots of money and develop these vaccinations in tobacco plants, which now there's all kinds of stuff they're developing in tobacco plants, and it all started with DARPA. In the company's facilities, 5-week-old tobacco plants are exposed to a vacuum process. And I talked about this where they literally drown and suffocate tobacco leaves. They are exposed to a vacuum process that forces bacteria containing genetic material from a pandemic virus into the plant cells. They force it into the cells with a vacuum. The plants are then placed back into a greenhouse, and 5 days later, there is a quote-unquote massive expression of viral protein, says Sheldon, in the form of virus-like particles, ding-ding VLPs, which are the protein shells of a virus that lack the infectious genetic material. These virus-like particles are then harvested, purified, and made into a vaccine. Remember, we read about virus-like particles. Those are the Trojan horses that they can fill with any type of payload they want to get inside the plant or the animal. And then it tricks the immune system and can breach the cell wall. Viruses are really good at doing that. And get into your bodily system. These virus-like particles are then harvested, purified, and made into a vaccine, and the company is currently beginning a phase 2 trial, and this was in 2010, for the H5N1. Remember that one? Pandemic flu vaccine. But they also have a seasonal vaccine in development. BioLex Therapeutics, a North Carolina State University spinoff found in 1997. Remember, we talked about that's how they do it. You get DARPA money at the universities. You get all the smart kids working on a vaccine or a project, some mad science gone man. They come up with something, then they spin them off into an IPO and create a startup that everyone invests in, all the insiders, and they make bazillions of dollars. It was a University of North Carolina spinoff founded in 1997 has defined their niche in the hard-to-make proteins, and this company's work is in lemna, also known as duckweed, a tiny aquatic clonal plant that doubles in biomass every 36 hours. And it is skilled at making proteins that mammalian cells struggle and often fail to produce. If our mammalian cells struggle and fail to produce these certain proteins, maybe we shouldn't be producing those proteins. Doesn't it make you wonder, why our body doesn't produce them well? I don't know. Most of our bodies work pretty okay without some transgenic protein being put into it to make us better. In facilities that look remarkably like traditional biomanufacturing sites, the company grows duckweed under artificial light in 1 by 2 meter bags of growth media and has produced over 40 proteins, including cytokines, vaccines, antibodies, and biosimilars. We have not found a protein that we have not been able to make appropriately, says CEO of BioLex, Jan Turek. But in the end, as a privately funded company, and I bet if we looked into them, we're going to find out people like rich tech billionaires, maybe even the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has sprinkled funding in there. We've been finding Bill and Melinda Gates involved in so many of these different startups making vaccines. And we want to make sure that we are focusing on making ones with value for our pipeline. Those valuable proteins BioLex has determined are controlled to release interferon for the treatment of hepatitis C, which is currently preparing for a phase 3 human trial, an antibody as well for non-Hodgkin's B-cell lymphoma, and a human recombatant plasmin to dissolve blood clots, an enzyme pharma companies have struggled to produce for over 20 years. Traditional expression systems are just not able to make it, he says. But with this duckweed system, BioLex can produce it at commercial levels. Despite the speed and diversity and the low cost of their systems, biofarming companies are still waiting to be invited to the pharma lunch table. And even though the pharmaceutical and biotech industries are on the cutting edge of technology, at the very same time, they can be somewhat conservative in terms of adopting these plant manufacturing technologies themselves. Oh, it can be quite a challenge for us to communicate what we can do with our systems. But even one example of a plant-made drug on the market will make the difference. And biotech executives agree. That first plant may soon come from Protalix, a biotech based in Israel that produces proteins from carrot cell cultures in disposable plastic bioreactors. And we found out they did get that approval in May of 2012. You know, guys, now that we're going back and looking at this, it really makes me wonder, this 21st Century Cures Act and accelerating the discovery of medicines and the testing on humans and bringing it to human trials for the sick, indigent, and desperate, making it available, even though it hasn't been tested in humans, to be able to save lives. But we also had in the TPP and some of that leaked documentation, one of the patent protections in there was for the new, quote unquote, what they call biologics. These are considered biologics drugs. So they're going to protect all the new mad science and spread it worldwide. They can produce it cheaply and they can get a pretty penny for it because they can make cures for everything. Even though the pharmaceutical biotech industry is on the cutting edge of technology, at the same time, they can be somewhat conservative. We read all that. Yes. So they've produced proteins from carrot cells, this Protalix, with an X at the end. The company's lead product is a recombatant glucocerebrosidase, which is a treatment for Gaucher disease, a rare genetic disorder caused by a deficiency of the enzyme that breaks down fatty substances. And in June 2009, Genzyme temporarily halted protection, and we read about that. It ought to move fast, says Maurice Moloney, founder of Symbiosis, the current director and CEO of Rothamsted Research in the UK. The Protalix Pfizer partnership is a prime example of what needs to happen for plant biotechs to get their drugs on the market, he adds, and none of the plant-based companies are big enough to do it on their own. So here's the thing. So we have GMO plant companies now totally in bed with Big Pharma, and Big Pharma is totally partnered with the federal government as part of this precision medicine program. Now, we read 2016, Obama inked under the 2016 budget $215 million to be able to sprinkle around for all kinds of development. They gave $130 million to the National Institute of Health, $70 million to the National Cancer Institute, $10 million to the FDA to acquire additional expertise and advance the development of high-quality, curated databases to support regulatory structures needed to advance innovation in precision medicine and public health. They gave $5 million to ONC, and I'm not sure what ONC is. That's the Office of the National Coordinator for Health Information Technology, to support the development of interoperability standards and requirements that address privacy. So as part of all that, they released this new program called the Precision Medicine Initiative Cohort Program. And this is kind of where we ended yesterday. They are looking for up to 1 million volunteers to step right up and become a part of this Precision Medicine Initiative, giving it up to the database, becoming a part of sharing your information for the good of all. You know, don't worry about those pesky HIPAA requirements. Don't worry. We got rid of a lot of those. Actually, hold on. I found that story. And it's very interesting. This is all happening at the very same time. That happened during Sandy Hook. You know, the first worst mass shooting on the United States soil. Obama called for gun control and getting rid of those pesky HIPAA regulations that protected your privacy. January 5th, 2016, a new rule which takes effect next month enables providers, this is healthcare providers, to report limited information to the National Background Check System about the identities of individuals provided by federal law from owning firearms due to mental health reasons. And yeah, we're going to get into mental health. Remember, being able to control and understand all of these different bodily processes, and including the microbiome initiative, which Obama inked just a few weeks ago at a federal level. We got people such as Bill and Melinda Gates investing in that Synologics that make synthetic gut bacteria. And as they understand more and more about how to control the brain and how the gut bacteria influences the brain, and we have Tommy Insel, the former director of the National Institute of Health that went to go work for Verily at Google on mental health issues. Don't think that they aren't going to be using some of these biologics. This is all part of the same thing that they're working on here. How to be able to manipulate and control not only what we think, but how we act. Read the first paragraph or so here, this getting rid of some of your HIPAA protections. The Obama administration on Monday, in January of 2016, unveiled a number of executive actions on gun control. And I think there were 33 of them that day. We watched it live, including an amendment to the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, more affectionately known as HIPAA, privacy rules to enable mental health providers to more easily disclose limited information to the National Instant Criminal Background Check System. The Department of Health and Human Services Office for Civil Rights issued a final ruling which takes effect next month, February 2016, removing legal barriers preventing states from reporting relevant information to the National Instant Criminal Background Check System. This system is maintained by the FBI to conduct background checks on people who may be legally disqualified from owning firearms. And the Gun Control Act of 1968 identified several categories known as prohibitors of individuals who are prohibited from engaging in the shipment, transport, receipt, or possession of a firearm, which includes a mental health prohibitor. That prohibitor applies to individuals who have been involuntarily committed to a mental institution for mental illness, found incompetent to stand trial, or not guilty by reason of insanity, or otherwise determined by a court to be a danger to themselves and others, unable to manage their own affairs due to mental illness. The Brady Handgun Violence Protection Act of 93 prevents the transfer of firearms by licensed dealers to individuals who are subject to the same mental health prohibitor. But HIPAA privacy rules have prohibited mental health providers and HIPAA-covered entities, which would be any of your doctors, from reporting to the National Criminal Background Check System the identities of individuals subject to the federal mental health prohibitor. And this modification, announced in January of 2016, better enables the reporting of the identities of these individuals to background checks while continuing to strongly protect individuals' privacy interests. You know, guys, I am not about giving a firearm to a lunatic, okay? Because I don't think that's a very good idea. But on the other hand, as they chip away at our privacy rights and protections that were in place and put it all in the name of keeping you safe, you know, you were a danger to yourself and others, and you have a mental health problem. And as they have redefined now mental health on a spectrum, and they're coming up with all kinds of new ways to define mental health, tell us that all of us are a little bit mentally deranged. And using their own definition of what mental health is, you could see very easily how this could get out of control. Anyone with oppositional defiant disorder, which I believe is in DSM-5, the Diagnostic and Statistics Manual used by mental health professionals. Anyone that's got that oppositional defiant disorder, who has trouble following rules, who likes to say no a lot, who are difficult individuals, could be diagnosed as having a mental disease. And I saw in DSM-5, there was a big issue where pharmaceutical companies had a lot to do with them including a lot of these new mental health diseases in the manual. So we got BioPharma, who's making all these new farming drugs with a pH through genetically modified foods. We have this precision medicine initiative and this 21st Century Cures Act that's going to get rid of all of the regulatory protections that we had to protect us from these crazy experimental drugs going into phase 1, 2, and 3 human trials for the desperate and the dying. And now we got a loss of HIPAA protection for our privacy where they will be able to go in and make a determination because now you're going to be put into the database. You're going to be in the database, people, as part of the electronic medical health record system that is tied directly to precision medicine for them to be able to splice and dice and decide whether or not you have some precondition that could make you potentially a future mental patient. When you start doing DNA swabs and they can identify who has genes that make them mentally unstable or who has genes once they identify the particular genes for making you a thinker that questions things. Guys, we're going to be the ones who are targeted for these newfangled medications that just quiets that part of the brain down. That's what I'm seeing in the future here. This is a very ugly picture. We are in major danger. And people are just going along with this 21st century medicine. Yes, the dangling poison carrot is that you'll be able to live forever, Johnny. You'll be able to live to 500 years old with all this newfangled wonderful medicine that's going to cure all disease. Anyway, so now let's get into this Precision Medicine Initiative cohort program. So now this is going to get all the dumb people who think that they're doing a good thing ready to step right up. They're already doing it for genetics. Check that box, Johnny, when you go to 23andMe to discover who your ancestors are. Make sure you check that box to give us access to your DNA that goes directly to the National Institute of Health to be used now in experimentation. Far too many diseases do not have a proven means of prevention or effective treatments. So we must gain better insights into the biological, environmental, and behavioral influences on these diseases to make a difference for the millions of Americans who suffer from them. And by the way, this is a National Institute of Health document that I am reading right now. Precision medicine is an emerging approach for disease treatment and prevention that takes into account individual variability in genes, environment, and, your lifestyle. Remember that. Even stress can damage your genes and make you a defective human for each and every person. And while some advances in precision medicine have been made, the practice is not currently in use for most diseases, but we're going to change that. That's why on January 20th, 2015, Obama announced the Precision Medicine Initiative in his State of the Union address. And he funded it through 2016 budgets. And through advances in research, technology, and policies that empower patients, this Precision Medicine Initiative will also enable a new era of medicine in which researchers, providers, and patients all work together to develop individualized care. It means that each of us actually gets our own label in the database and becomes one of the research participants. That's what you are. The president called for $215 million for fiscal year 2016 to support the initiative, which includes several components with efforts from across the federal government. And of this total budget, we have $130 million. We read this to the National Institute of Health to build a national large-scale research participant group called a cohort. And they were also given $70 million to the National Cancer Institute to lead efforts in cancer genomics as part of the Precision Medicine Initiative for Oncology. This Precision Medicine Initiative cohort program will seek to expand precision medicine to all diseases, all of them, by building a national research cohort of 1 million or more U.S. participants. And many factors have converged, oh yes they have, to make now the right time, yes it has, to begin a program of this scale and this scope. Americans are engaging in improving their health, yes, and falling for the trick, in participating in this health research more than ever before. Electronic health records have been widely adopted. Genomic analysis costs have dropped significantly, and data science has become increasingly sophisticated, along with healthcare technologies that have all become mobile. And we've talked about every single one of these facets over the last few years. We now even have mobile biosensors. And biosensors they can put in your clothes. Guys, they have just yanked the bag shut. All of our worst nightmares just came true, and it is called the Precision Medicine Initiative Cohort Program. Don't become a cohort. The PMI, Precision Medicine Initiative Cohort Program, will be a participant-engaged, data-driven enterprise supporting research at the intersection of human biology, ding, behavior, ding, genetics, ding, environment, ding, data science and computation, ding, and much more that we're not going to tell you about because it'll be too scary, to produce new knowledge with the goal of developing more effective ways to prolong our health. Yes. Keep you alive, all the rich people if you can afford it, and treat disease. The cohort will broadly reflect the diversity of the U.S. population, including participants from diverse social, racial, ethnic, and ancestral populations living in a variety of geographies, social environments, and economic circumstances. Yes, we want to make sure that we find the poor people too, so we can prove how being stressed out, not having money, and drinking alcohol and eating processed foods makes you a defective human. Guys, this is so ugly. It is so ugly. They're databasing all of this from all age groups and health statuses. Information from the cohort, I can't believe they're calling them cohorts, will be a broad, powerful resource for researchers working on a variety of important health questions. And yes, again, Obama just sold you. They got rid of that R&D line item budget from all these private pharmaceutical companies where they used to spend millions, if not billions of dollars in R&D, and they just handed them the American public to use as their guinea pigs. This program will seek to extend precision medicine success to many diseases, including common diseases such as diabetes, heart disease, Alzheimer's, obesity, and mental illness, ding, like depression, bipolar disorder, and schizophrenia, which we found out can all be tied to gut bacteria, as well as the rare diseases like that Gaucher's we just read about. Importantly, the cohort will focus on not just disease, but also on ways to increase an individual's chances of remaining healthy throughout life. Make sure you get your Fitbit. We'll give you a coupon, $50 off. The goal of the PMI cohort program is to set the foundation, yes, they are, of a new way of doing research. Yes, it's forever. We're going to give it freebie to the BioPharma that fosters open, responsible data sharing. Yes, get rid of all your privacy. HIPAA's out a window because you checked that box. with the highest regard to participant privacy right. The only one who'll know about it is the federal government. We won't tell anyone. Don't worry about it. And that puts engaged participants at the center. Yes, at the center of our research efforts. Ding! It puts engaged participants at the center of our research efforts. Let's translate that. It makes you the BioPharma guinea pig willingly. In March of 2015, the National Institute of Health Director, Dr. Francis Collin, tasked a working group of his advisory committee to the director to develop a plan for creating and managing a large research cohort. And on September 15th, 2015, Dr. Collins accepted the framework outlined in the working group report and is moving quickly to build that infrastructure so that participants can begin enrolling in the cohort when, this year in 2016. So there you have it, guys. I hope that I have at least outlined to you that I am not a tinfoil hat wearing lunatic. This is really happening. It's happening all under the guise of keeping you healthy and safe. But it's not what it's about. Remember, there is no such thing as a free lunch at all. That dangling poison carrot or apple is there to get you to step right up and become a part of this new 21st century insanity. They are engineering all of biology on this planet, and now it's time for you. We've already done it to bugs and plants and animals. Now it's time for you, humans, en masse, millions at a time, to see what happens. All right, now let's move over here. Food for thought. This is out of Medical Daily. Figured we'd touch on this. This is a newer story, March 29, 2016. Gut bacteria may influence how the mind works and affect your mood and behavior. Now, we already found out Synologics, and let's go there. Oh my God, is the show already over? No way! How did that happen? All right, guys, make sure you stick around. It's Tuesday. Mr. Ken Blanche is live up next. Lots of live radio tonight. I'll catch you with you tomorrow. Everybody take care.